friend here. We used to be in media years ago. Now he went into academia, I remained. Maybe he made the better choice. I don't know. The jury is out on that. But I must apologize to all of you for the sudden change in program, because I'm programmed to go to University Selangor. I've spoken there a number of times at 8Com seminars. So the program kicked in this morning and I was there. So apologies all round. How much time do we have, sir? A lot of time, huh? Okay. Old journalists never stop speaking, you know. So you better take me off when I do more than I'm supposed to. This morning the topic before us is media and the reporting of climate change. I found the theme rather exciting. The media's role in reporting climate change: observer, advocate, or critic. I would change "and" to or critic. I would think that the media plays each of these roles at different times. I'll go to the heart of the matter. Climate reporting is not sexy. I use the term rather loosely because in the media, I was 35 years in the New Straits Times, a year in the Sun, and 3 months in television. I tell you, there's a great deal of dynamic there in climate reporting, or not. The converse applies, I think. Climate reporting, as I said, is not sexy. So the print media only reports stories of immediate interest. Drought, Durian Tunggal Dam is drying up, we will report it. And then we go back to the sexy topics like crime, accident, divorce, personalities, big names. So the media is fickle. The interest is ephemeral. It's never permanent unless there's a push factor. And normally the push factor comes in terms of immediacy. Things that happen, just right now. If there is a landslide somewhere in Cameron Highlands this morning, I'll tell my reporter to drop everything and go there. Because that's what is of immediate interest to my viewers, television viewers. Also with readers, people who consume news from the print media and broadcast. So the media, unless it is kicked in the behind, will not report much of climate change. We will go and watch movies like 2012. We will watch it and say, wonderful, man. We hope it never happens like that. What is that Al Gore film? I forget the title. The Inconvenient Truth. Okay, for a moment, inconvenient truth, just for a moment. And then the world moves on. The media moves on. I find this to be the reality. The ideal is something else. The ideal is, media regularly looks at causative factors. Why is this happening? Why is there prolonged droughts in Malaysia, which is lush? We are blessed with so much of rainfall in the wrong place. Because the trees have been cut where the rain is supposed to fall, in catchment areas, and go into your dams, through your rivers. But that's not happening. Yeah? And we are inconvenienced in the evening by heavy showers on the way from Shah Alam to our home in KL. The water just drains off. So the media, basically, friends, has no time for climate change. Very sad. It's a very sad narrative. But this is the reality. So someone has to prod the media. Someone has to do it. So who does it? government perhaps. In Malaysia, I'm attending also, right, you're on. I'm also attending the World Summit on Media and Children in Hotel Royal Chulan. I'll be there after this. The same issue comes about. Why is the media not addressing children's issues? I would ask, why is the media not addressing climate change per se? First reason, not sexy. Two, there's no money in it. Friends, remember, the media is not a charity. It's a business. The print media is a business. My TV station is a business. We got to get in the ads. Who will now advertise about climate? The paint companies perhaps, but they are pained by the fact that every time there's something about climate, we go to them and ask for the ads. Nobody else wants to advertise. So this is the stark reality, as it were. In Malaysia, the mainstream media needs to be guided on coverage, issues, thematic coverage. The flavor of the day, when the government so decides, could be climate change. But then there you have this dynamic going on where sometimes the government in Malaysia, as elsewhere, does not see climate change as an immediate challenge. They would do firefighting, literally firefighting. When there's an issue on climate, the minister, the government, the spokesman would come out and pursue that issue. And the mainstream media would follow suit. But interest dies out the minute that kind of prodding from government ceases. Government moves on, and the mainstream media also moves accordingly for reasons you and I know best. There's no compulsion, but the media would necessarily do that. So, where does that leave us with the issue of climate reporting? Now, I'm addressing the big picture, the overview. But if you go into the minutiae of climate reporting, we are now talking about a genre where reporters are not generally adept at it. I dare say. I was editor for many years in print. If there's something happening about climate, I would have to scratch my head, knock myself, slap myself on which reporter to choose. Because if I look around the newsroom, none of them has the expertise, the knowledge of terminology that would be necessary to do climate change reporting. At best, they would write generally, very generally, and I have to call, hey, bring me that paper from that seminar, let me look at it, and maybe with my experience, I would pick up a certain point and delve into it. Maybe write the story in a way that does justice to that issue. But for the reporter, it's just one assignment, and then he or she moves on. So, we need to have dedicated reporters. I think that's one substantive point I want to make this morning. People who will be trained to do climate reporting, who will understand the underlying factors behind climate change and pursue the topic, the issue over time, pursue it. So we need the media itself to train journalists all around, across the board, on climate reporting. No use training reporters alone. You must train editors also. Because editors, sometimes editors very sadly, they have a certain mindset. A story must be written this way, full stop. The reporter might go to a climate reporting workshop, learn new techniques, come back to the office, write the story, only to have it turned around and say, why did you report it this way? This is reality, eh? This is reality. So there's a disconnect sometimes between the on-the-ground reporting by field journalists, goes back to the office, and the whole thing turns around. Secondly, there must be greater engagement between the media owners who generally make policy for the media. Ownership, as they say, the dictum is ownership dictates policy. So I think there is a need for the media to be engaged. I don't think it's practical to expect media to engage climate experts, etc. The force, as it were, outside the media needs to exert pressure in a positive way on the media, so that there's change in the mindset. We need to take climate reporting seriously. Okay, I've spoken a little bit about the media side of it, but I must at this juncture talk also about people who handle climate change. The scientists, the people behind the desk who compile, collate information. Very frankly, it's very boring stuff. It's not the stuff that people want to read. I was going through a number of papers on the internet while preparing for this seminar. I found it absolutely boring. So perhaps my take on this, and my 10 cents worth, is people who want to provide the media with very basic information on the reality of climate change need to have a change in writing style. Very frankly. We have to get away. I wouldn't say you, because there's a mixed crowd here. But the people, the scientists, the climatologists need to get away from boring writing. The media is fickle, one. Two, it looks out for key statements, statements that would be taken up by the readers. The readers don't want to say, according to Professor so-and-so in his research in 1902, he found this. The people are not going to be interested in this. And remember, I go back to my earlier statement, the media is not a charity or an NGO. The media makes money. It's their core business, to make money. If not, they shouldn't be there doing what they do. So, the media always looks out for what the reader wants. The reader is the most important person. The reader is the most important person. And the reader wants stuff that is interesting. Human interest stories. You see, very often we find in climate reporting, the media tends to go to human interest stories rather than tackling the core issues. Can you fault the media? I don't think so. Because the media, again, needs to feed the ravenous crowd out there with the stuff they want. Of course, in feature writing, you can to some extent, sermonize about climate change. Or climate change, you should take seriously climate change. This is happening, that's happening. But the public's interest is thus far only. After a little while, they stop reading. The reality of the situation is, and I always tell people this, people stop reading after the 5th paragraph. That's the reality of the situation. After 5 paragraphs, you can write 22 paragraphs. Nobody would read unless it's gripping, exciting stuff. And human interest stories are exciting. So you have a conundrum here, a problem. How do you engage viewers, listeners, people out there with good, interesting, exciting, important stuff? I'm not saying go for the peripheral issues. I'm not saying that. Go for the core of the issue. But we together have to make it interesting, palatable. I think that's the order of the day. The news that we put out must be palatable, must be tasty, and people must come back to us. That's the name of the game. How do we do that? Well, we need to engage like this. Media and various other sectors, all of us are interested in climate change. But let's put our thoughts on the table. Look out for ways and means of how each one of us can do our jobs better, because climate change is coming. It's here. It's at our doorstep. The day will come when water levels, sea levels rise to the extent Maldives is underwater. And then the foreign media would jump on that issue. Maldives is underwater. Thousands of people are living in boats. 3 days later, there's an earthquake in Japan. Maldives is dropped like a hot potato. And there you have it. That's the reality of the situation. So perhaps what we need to do is to make the best of it. The ideal could be something else. But while we pursue the ideal of regular, in-depth reporting on climate change, let's all accept the fact that we have to deal with a fickle media. It's not a bad thing, really. A fickle media is probably a good thing, because you get lots of different coverage, palatable to the consumer. Let's deal with that reality, and let me see. I'll just provide a few facts here. A Gallup poll in March of this year found that 64% of Americans thought that climate change was not a serious threat. Only 34% thought climate change was a serious threat. I mean, look at that. This is raw data. People on the ground. I don't know about the Malaysian situation, because I don't know if any studies have been conducted in this respect. Does the average Malaysian Joe think that climate change is important? I think that question needs to be answered before the media jumps in and says, hey, my reader thinks climate change is important, so we will report climate change. We'll go to the universities, we'll talk to the professors, we'll talk to the meteorologists, we'll talk to climatologists, we'll talk to everyone across the board. Lastly, if I may, I must take a gun and put it to the head of my head and to the heads of some journalists who don't understand climate change. The worst thing that can happen is to misreport climate change. Simplify it to the point it becomes nonsense. Simplify it or sensationalize it to the point that expectations are raised, only to be dropped the next day by experts who say that's nonsense. So believability becomes an issue. If we raise the flag every once in a while that, hey, climate change is coming, Aceh might be hit by something or the other in the next 2 years, Krakatoa, I read this years ago when I was a young man, it's going to explode. It hasn't happened yet. I'm just citing a stray example here. But what I mean is, there are so many false starts that people tend to stop believing the media when the media writes about climate change. So I would think a median approach, a median approach, not the extreme, not the other extreme, which is no climate reporting, but the median, the average approach is the best approach. So the reader, the viewer, the listener gets a balanced perspective on the issue. I always like questions, so I think I've spoken enough. Mr. Chairman, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Balan. I must agree to many of the suggestions. Coincidentally, I teach young journalists in the university, trying to make them into more reporters who will be, who understand climate change much better. We have, for example, in our university, we offer science reporting, but just some basic, startup. But we need definitely more than that. Particularly now, we live in a desensitized society where people, for example, every day we see about accidents, murder, etc. We become less sensitive about such happening. So we need, a better and a balanced reporting whereby every individual, would hopefully understand the seriousness of this subject matter. So since time is much limited, how much? Okay. So we have now the opportunity, to ask Mr. Balan, when he's still here, a question which boggles your mind, particularly when he says about we are more interested in the RM because we run a business. Okay, so let's put the floor on to you then. Thank you very much, please.
Good morning. Yes. Riaz from Northern Corridor. Yeah. It's depressing. But that's the reality, that media does not take an interest in issues that affect our daily lives, really. But maybe the strategy now should be, rather than change the mindset of the media, we should change the mindset of the masses. Because climate change is by and large very esoteric to the masses, very esoteric. So if the masses don't feel that it impacts on their daily lives, why should the media bother? It's a chain reaction. So perhaps the strategy of conferences, of seminars should be, how do we centralize the issue of important issues, global issues like climate change, as a central daily, everyday issue to the people. Perhaps that should be the strategy, rather than telling the media, hey, you should report on climate change, it's very important. I'm not sure. You tell me.
Thank you. Interesting comment. All of us sometimes forget that the media comprises people who are people. If there's climate change out there, it's not only going to affect everyone, it affects the media, their families as well. This point is forgotten very often. I believe that engagement and emphasis on the effects in the near term, middle term and long term of global warming, for instance, on everyone, including the media, must be underlined, so that the media takes this as a personal issue. Because, as you said, how do we sensitize the people towards climate change? You sensitize the media first. I mean, their families, their children are out there. If they're getting, acid rain, it's going to fall on the others as well as the media's own families, their children. So I think one way would be to tell the media, listen guys, you are also involved. Your families are involved. So take it seriously. And I tell you, they will. We will.
Hello. Yeah. Okay. Let me say first, thanks for your very honest description on the state of the media. I mean, why you report on certain issues and why you don't, which is all about money, right? So I want to say that I find this very sad because I think that media should have a sense of responsibility, and I wanted to ask if you had that sense of responsibility, that you should actually report on climate change despite the fact that it's not sexy, despite the fact that it doesn't make as much money. So in such a way that you can look for other options. You know, how can we actually really talk about climate change? Let's compensate. If we cannot get money from sponsors, from advertisement, let's try to get the government to fund because it's a public service, for instance. Or if, the other thing that I want to say is if you see this in a way like a race to the bottom, because I have seen newspapers which used to be more proper, and because you have other media which is publishing sexy stories and they get more readership, then they will get more money, and then it's a race to the bottom where every newspaper will start doing the same. So it doesn't matter if the content is actually of good quality or not. What matters is let's get the advertisement, let's get the money. So, you know, the quality drops down. So in such a way that you can actually try to stop this race to the bottom, talk to your competitors of the media and say, hey, folks, let's try to get serious about this. You know, let's talk about things which matter to society, not just to our sponsors. And the last question is if you think that citizen media can be a solution for this in such a way that if citizen media don't care about money, they care about the real issues. If you see that there is someone doing something about it, if you will say, hey, we are actually losing face because there is something being reported about climate change and it's normal people who is doing this, so we should be doing the same. So if this is a potential solution. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll take you up on your last point. Citizen journalism. That's where the answer perhaps lies. Very good point, observation. Now, I take that and connect it to my point that the media will give the people what they generally want. And if the people, through citizen journalism, want issues like climate change to be highlighted, then so be it. But we need to develop that area called citizen journalism. Now, the social media is doing it quite well. Social media, by the way, doesn't make much money. That's the reality of the situation in Malaysia. But yet, there is an attempt being made to engage the people and get them to report the reality, the on-the-ground situation on climate change, on global warming, on carbon emissions, you name it. So perhaps the answer, as you said, lies in more citizen journalism. And in that respect, one final point is, citizen journalism is good, but sometimes all the basic ingredients of professionalism is thrown out the window and emotion gets into play. Journalism always has to be objective, has to be factual, and has to be balanced. So we need to educate. All of us need to educate the citizenry, as it were, on how to report these things. There is a place for emotion, but the people, the guardians of the media, need to be the moderators and pick it up from there. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe just one more question.
Thank you, Balan, for those insights. Well, you reminded me, at one point, something I read in a different context, the media and the media. Now, who is at fault? He who sins or she, he who pays for the sin or she who sins? So, I was reminded of this. So is it the reader we as readers who should be blamed for the state of the Malaysian media on, taking up very critical issues as climate change, and I think a whole range of environmental matters, which at one time, when you were editor in Straits Times, I used to lobby you, calling you from the ozone layer to whatever. Yeah, citizens have a role. But I think you did touch on this. I think the quality of journalism in this country, and this goes to the universities as well, and perhaps the chair can answer that. I mean, what kind of courses do they go through? Do we have investigative journalism? Climate change, and any interest in climate change would require investigative journalism. I mean, it's not just about heat and rain. I mean, we heard how it will impact on food, for example, and food touches readers very much, particularly women who have to be in charge of household, food security. If climate change is linked to food security, talk to farmers. I talk to farmers in Sarawak, talk to farmers in Kedah, Kelantan. They will tell you the changing weather patterns affects the times of sowing, harvesting. Yesterday we had an excellent presentation from Sabah, how climate change impacts even the quality of paddy. So there are issues that journalists can address in the context of climate change or even more complex issues. But because media owners and media editors, I hold them responsible as well, are so interested in the money making, they have not invested in developing better quality journalists. They have not engaged with schools of journalism. So there are areas that will also need to be addressed. If the Financial Times, the Guardian, even Jakarta Post, or any of the Indian newspapers, if you take, I get better articles on climate change in these papers than in the Malaysian media. And I think editors have a responsibility. They can influence policymakers, they can influence media owners, and they can influence journalists. So I think editors must use the powers that we have for better quality journalism, not only in climate change, but across all issues that affect Malaysians daily. Thank you.
Thank you. You reminded me of our days back then. She used to hound me for stories. Can you carry this? Can you carry that? And she was such a pleasant person, so I obliged. But back to now, to today, point taken. There needs to be better quality of reporting on issues of importance like climate change. But I would tend to believe that universities, institutions of higher learning, tertiary institutions need to educate undergraduates to be people who will express themselves in society once they graduate. Right now we have a polity that is not questioning issues, not putting pressure on the media. I go back to my earlier point. Media gives the people what they want. Ask. And how do they ask? They don't know how to ask. Our schools are not churning out students who are questioning things. Just learning by rote. I generalize, of course. But that goes on to universities. I like to believe that university slang is different. I like to believe. I don't know yet. But this is the place where undergraduates have to be taught to question things. Why is it like that? Write into the newspapers, get engaged in citizen journalism so that editors, owners of media are sensitized to these issues and take it seriously because their readers want it. It cannot be up, top, down. We give you, whether you like it or not, we'll give you this. No. I tend to believe you must want it, then we'll give it to you. It has to be two-way. Yeah? So, very good point, and I think the media has to take it seriously. People like Professor here has to tell his deans, his lecturers, hey guys, let's get people, graduates who will question everyone. I'm not saying only question the government, question everyone. Within the law, of course. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe then I should take this opportunity to say a few words, on this issue. My best answer would be actually, well, we're doing our part. We do expose our students to all sort of issues. For example, nowadays we talk about press freedom. Okay, every year, we are actually organizing things together with AIDCOM, the World Press Freedom Day, because we do understand the fact that, although we talk about freedom, the countries are becoming, smaller and a global, village, etc. But from journalists being killed in war, now journalists even slaughtered, where are we heading? So that's why we need to, continue exposing the student that this is a job where you need to take up, because if they just go by the reports of now journalists are even got their throat cuts and this appear on the, on all sort of social media now. Nobody wants to be journalists for that matter. Okay, so similarly we involve our student to the fact that they have to be part of the society. In recent, last June we organized a conference, which is, we work together with Cornell University and a UN agency in Korea. Engaged learning. What is meant by engaged learning? Well, we are training basically the students to be part of the society, not just teaching them, how to write, your report, news report, the right full stops and commas and right grammar, but to be reporting responsibly about society. So similarly, this climate change seminar we are holding, I have to certainly thank AIDCOM, although we are partners in this, for putting up, suggesting this an event like this, because then from here we could follow up and tell our student, this is beyond writing just about there's an inverted pyramid, you must write how many people killed and how many got shot, it's more than that. So we hope through all this kind of effort, later on we'll have journalists who hopefully Mr. Balan will say, this is the one which we would like to take. But I think so far so good, right? We have already started some.
The right to information, the lack of right to information, that has stifled.
Certainly, the right to information is an essential right that every one of us should pursue. We should pressure the powers that be on the need to disclosure of the truth of the matter. Very often there are red herrings all around. Everyone's throwing red herrings out, so the media goes on the wrong track and finds out there's nothing. Tak ada benda. Okay. One last word, if I may, bro. I must talk about ABN. Asian Broadcasting Network. If not, I won't justify my presence here to my chairman. Quickly, Asian Broadcasting Network is a digital cable TV network. Digital TV, cable. I won't pitch the cost here. Okay, it's very cheap. It's very cheap compared to the competitor. No names. But we are the new kids on the block. I have 2 news bulletins daily to our subscribers. You can also watch it on the internet if you get the package. I have a talk show, a weekly talk show called Sfera Nuansa, Sphere, nuance, thanks to the Indonesians, nuansa becomes a bahasa word. Okay? So Sfera Nuansa is a talk show. I want to offer a slot to anyone to come on board. Let's discuss, and in the nearest future, I'll put you on for half an hour talk show on climate change. This is a offer I'm making now, limited season only. So, I mean, here you are. I'm going to engage you guys. Because for me, climate change is sexy. It is. But we need to package it in the right way. Talk about it in terms that my viewers will understand and appreciate and take up, so here the offer is made. ABN. Oh my! It is also a bank. That's the name. ABN Bank also. ABN AMRO. But we are ABN. We are here. We want to make a big noise about ourselves. We want to pick up issues that our viewers value and want to be discussed. We won't give our subscribers stuff that they don't want. So if our viewers want climate change, I think they do, I will provide it. Thank you.